Good afternoon. Okay, this is me. I'm a teacher at TEDxQSI Zhuhai. I teach high school English language art, and basically writing and reading is what I know, and is what I will speak about. My topic it's about vocabulary. Actually, I call it literacy snowball. It is applicable to everyone in life. Perhaps some of the things I will speak about are more general about, I lost my tongue. Let's just get started. Okay, I'm going to talk about vocabulary gap, or also called the literacy gap. I'm going to explain to you that it's more than just, vocabulary is more than just words that you know. I am going to show you how a literacy gap can be cured, and I'm going to give you a challenge. So I'll just start at the start for me, which is 30 million. 30 million words is a gap between students in high literacy households and students in low literacy households. How many words they have heard by age 4? So you may think 30 million is an amazing amount. I think yes, it is. Oh, sorry. There we go. That's my picture. So the blue line represents houses where students hear a wealth of different vocabulary, and the bottom line represents houses where it's considerably less so. So by age 4, they have a gap of 30 million words. This research came from the 1990s, and it's mostly about socioeconomic groups. However, I think in our community, we can also apply it to students who perhaps are studying in an English environment and are not hearing quite the same amount of English words at home. So if you are a second language English learner, you're kind of having the same experience here, right? You're hearing a lot less words at home than maybe some of your peers who are continuously in an English environment. Now, vocabulary itself, or the language, is one of the key predictors of your success in education. It is not just about can I read well or can I write well. It also affects something mess with my PT. It also affects mathematics, it affects chemistry, it affects physics, it even affects art, right? So it's not just about can I do well at reading Shakespeare or writing essays for me. Every single subject you touch in school, your vocabulary will determine how successful you are. See? Okay, I can explain to you. Every single one of them is supposed to pop up, and every time I click, nothing happens, but actually something is happening, but nothing is happening. Okay, so could we say successful students read well, right? Are successful students people who read well? And actually it's yes, but maybe no, because I say no. So reading well makes you a successful student. So it's not that if you're a good student, you will read a lot. It is more that if you read a lot, you will be a successful student. Now, as I said earlier, I teach high school English. And I started out with this story about 30 million word gap by age 4, right? So imagine what that gap would look like by the time students get to my classroom. That 30 million will have ballooned. And that gap is no longer a gap, it's like a massive chasm, right? Think Grand Canyon. So this is kind of what it starts to look like. If you are, okay, no need. So, as we say in China, and some of you may have heard this phrase before, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. And this also applies to your literacy, right? If you should have started hearing a lot of words 20 years ago, yes, or maybe 10 years ago if you're younger than me, but you still have a chance to make an adjustment. You can still fix this. Now, I have a student, and my student's called Bob, but Bob is not the real name of this student. I'm trying to protect Bob's privacy. And Bob thought that summary and analysis have the same meaning, right? So when I asked Bob, okay, can you analyze why this character did this thing in this book, or can you analyze like a text? Bob summarized the text. And I received from Bob a very clear explanation of what happened in the story, but no thought about why did that happen in the story, right? So I sat down with Bob and we talked about like what's the difference between summary and analysis, blah, blah, blah. And after a little bit, he's like, oh, okay. And he started having some deeper thoughts about what is going on with this story. And then later, Bob went to science, right? And in science, the teacher also asked him, can you analyze this data? Bob was like, hey, I know that word. And where before maybe he would summarize the data, it's like, okay, this is what I found, right? And it's kind of not what the teacher was asking. And now Bob has learned this word analysis, and suddenly that makes sense to him, right? So, sorry, what I was trying to say is that one word makes this massive difference in Bob's performance between science, mathematics, physics, English, arts, right? If you can see the difference between analysis and summary, all of these things make more sense to you. You can go on and on and on and on. But if you don't understand that, if you think it's the same word, you're stuck. Now, summary and analysis is just one word and just one example, right? Don't think summary analysis is the point of what I'm saying. It's just an example of this one little thing where a misunderstanding in one vocabulary word, or not knowing one vocabulary word, can stop you from learning. So, it is not just about learning either. Some of you who work in elementary education may have seen something like this. This is a color wheel of words to describe your emotions. Sorry, got excited. So imagine, or actually don't have to imagine, listen to my story. I have groups of students who work together. I had lots of group projects. Like, I think one of the earliest talks today was talking about a group project. And she was describing one of her peers who was not doing her work at all. And I was like, I've seen this, right? Many times. I think all teachers went like, oh yeah, that happens a lot. Now, imagine these two students are having this argument, right? And one student says, like, I'm mad at Susan. And this student maybe has somewhat limited vocabulary, so she uses the word mad. And Susan has a much bigger vocabulary. She has many more words that Susan can use to describe how she is feeling. So Susan might say something like, I felt dismissed. That's why I didn't do my work. I felt a little guilty. That's why I didn't do my work. So Susan, who has all these words to explain why she feels a certain way, she can express her emotions, right? So she's not just doing better at school, she's also able to explain why she feels happy or why she feels unhappy, or really to give a key description to that feeling of happiness. Between joy and exuberance and bliss, there's all different kinds of emotion, right? And you being able to express that will create something called emotional granulity. And it means if you can name your feelings directly, you can regulate them. If you can figure out, I'm not feeling bored, or I'm not feeling I'm interested, maybe I'm apathetic to this subject. Maybe you feel this way now. You can explain your feeling and you can regulate yourself much better. So what we should do, you should hang your words in a kind of closet, in a wardrobe. Your words are not just like words I know, words I've heard. What you should imagine is like you have all of these millions of words maybe floating around your head, and they kind of have to be organized, and you can see that they will fit together. So like Bob learned this word analyze, right? And then from analyze, Bob went on, and Bob learned things like analytical. Bob learned reanalyze. Bob learned analysis. Maybe he learned the word photosynthesis after this in his science class, right? From photosynthesis, he learned phototropic. He went on to photovoltaic. He went on to synthesize. And from synthesize, another world of ideas opens. So you can see Bob's vocabulary is kind of snowballing into something bigger. So if you imagine it as a wardrobe, before the words looked like this on that side, like that's my house, and Bob made this thing on the other side, right? And from that, he can pick out his outfit. If you have to figure out, every time you hear a word, oh my God, where is it? I know this meaning and it's somewhere in this pile of words that I may have heard before. Or it's like, oh, it's right there, and I pick it out. One will be a more successful student, right? Now, this snowball effect is also called the Matthew effect. And you can think about the Matthew effect as, it's also been paraphrased as the rich get richer. The more you know, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you know, and it kind of expands, balloons upwards like this. But it can also work for you if you are here. Because what it should also say is like there is hope, right? If it can so quickly expand upwards, the more I know, the more I learn, the more I learn, the more I know, then I can also make that work for me, even if I'm at the bottom now. Another thing about words is that they shape what you think. There's this scientific theory called the Sapir-Whorf effect. Basically, we think in thoughts. If I have vocabulary to think about something, I can think about it. If I don't have the vocabulary, can I think about it? Can Bob analyze if he doesn't understand the word analysis? Right? Can he do that thing without knowing that word? So he would go from that thing on the right to that thing on the left, right? His thoughts become organized. Now, there are these 4 words. Imagine a student who says, I think that. Or imagine a student who knows the words assumption, evidence, implication, and nuance. And he will, or she will, create a much more coherent thought. So instead of saying like, I think that Romeo likes Juliet, he could say something like, the author assumes X, the evidence suggests Y, and that implies Z. So it is not just about knowing more words or having better understanding. You start to think better thoughts. Right? Your thoughts become more structured. And somebody earlier talked about using AI to write essays. And I was thinking like, well, if your AI writes your essays, it's kind of like you are not learning how to think. Right? Essay writing is as much about learning how to make a coherent thought as it is about learning how to write an essay. So objections to this, like why should I try to expand my vocabulary? Why should I try and use fancy words? Why should I say, instead of like I think, why should I say I assume that, or the author assumes that? Maybe I don't want to do this. One of the objections is I will sound like a nerd. My students are very worried about this, and they will think like, oh, if I use all these fancy words, I'm just gonna sound like a try-hard, right? People are gonna make fun of me, blah, 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 blah. Well, actually, for one thing, nerds are cool, right? It's the age of the nerd. You can be hip. Use fancy words, and you'll fit right into modern society. The other thing is, research shows that actually, if you are more precise with your words, it shows you're very competent and you're actually approachable. And if you think about people who use like a lot of high-level vocabulary, actually, they can be nice. You think, oh, at least this person knows what they're talking about. So I will go and talk to them. And no less approachable. So, in summary, for the first one is like expanding your vocabulary is really good for learning, right? The second thing is, it's good for your emotional happiness. The better you're able to express your emotions, the better you can regulate them, the more you can explain to other people like, okay, I felt unhappy about what you said here, what you did this because of that, and we can talk about it. We can understand each other better, and the better we understand each other, the happier we get. So, the third one is you'll basically think better thoughts. Right? If you have more words to structure your ideas, you will think better thoughts. And at last, it is not at all uncool. So, be cool. Now, my challenge, and my baby, not my baby. My baby's much cuter than that. Pick one word, okay? Next week. So you have a couple of days respite, right? You can go home today, Sunday, chill out, do whatever. Monday morning, pick a word. And pick one you don't know yet. And learn it, use it, and then teach it to someone else. So you're like, okay, this is my word for the week. For example, apathy. Anyone know what apathy means? Apathy means like I'm told to. Yes, okay, go on, Nika.
It's like when you feel bad for someone and you like something like that. And you're like next to them.
That's empathy, yes, thank you.
Oh.
So Caleb, apathy? Okay. Apathy means when you just completely, like, it's not even don't care about something. You have so no feeling about something that even not caring is there. Okay, so if that's how you're feeling now, use that word on Monday. Teach your colleague, teach your coworkers, teach your students, teach your friends, mother, wife's mother, all fine. And hopefully we can kind of start a snowball, right? So you just need 10 minutes. You got a new word. You give this word to someone else. Maybe they can pass it forward. And that 30 million gap, that chasm that is there in my class, you can close it by just hearing more words, using more words. And that is all I wanted to tell you. So, thank you.